Hi folks, welcome into Beyond the Briefing, our aviation and weather related YouTube channel. And today we're going to talk about something that many of us we've dealt with before, and that's when the forecast changes. And I'll give you a little backstory here about something that happened recently. Had a student of mine who was going on a trip to see one of his favorite teams play. He's an Auburn grad, and he was heading over to Oxford, Mississippi. And the forecast, he had discussed with me prior to leaving what the forecast was going to be like, what he needed to watch out for. And the forecast was very much VFR conditions. We'd have some rain come in. That was going to clear out, and we would have VFR conditions during the afternoon after the game and, of course, the next day. So the weekend forecast, kind of a mixed bag, but much of it looked good. Well, we get up early that morning, and the forecast, where the rain had really supposed to have cleared out by 5, 6 a.m., here's what it looked like outside and on the radar. There you go. Covered up with rain. And that rain lingered for much of the day on Saturday. Stayed with us lunchtime through the afternoon. After the rain had cleared, the ceilings went way down. And we were talking about 200-300 foot overcast. So IFR conditions between Birmingham and Oxford, Mississippi. Obviously, a no-go on that Saturday for our student who had gone to the game and just kind of like, wow, what am I going to do? I've got this Piper Cherokee over here and I can't get it back and I'm going to have to wait it out. So we did the right thing. He didn't try to become a daredevil and go and scud run or anything like that. Ceilings started to come up a bit on Sunday. At times marginal VFR, but very much IFR conditions throughout much of the day between Oxford, Mississippi and also the Birmingham area. So I thought, well, we can wait this out and see what happens. If we get a 2,000 foot ceiling, is this something that you want to attempt? Stay below the cloud cover there and make our way back to Birmingham. Relatively new student or new pilot, and also that area, not a lot of terrain there, so that's not a concern, but you do have obstacles that you have to watch out for. Never a proponent of doing any kind of scud running. So that was one of the alternatives. You know, is the ceiling going to come up enough where it's not going to be that bad to get back home? Staying a high level of marginal VFR. So we debated that, but it was really coming in and out. We had IFR conditions, hard IFR conditions, marginal VFR, and it just did not seem like a good idea. So the alternatives, wait it out, get a car, drive home, go back, get the airplane another day, or we put together what we called our rescue trip, and me and another pilot friend of mine and another pilot who was an instructor, I decided to make a run for it and head over to Oxford, Mississippi, go IFR, obviously, we're IFR pilots, and we were going to drop the other pilot off who is an instrument-rated pilot in CFII to give the students some practical training in instrument conditions since the forecast was so awry from what we had expected. So it worked out pretty well, but still a very interesting trip. How many times have we dealt with the situation? You plan on something, you look at all your weather data, you get weather briefings, and it still turns out different than you thought. Weather does have that unpredictable nature when you're dealing with the future. We do a pretty good job of nailing it most of the time, but there are those situations. In the case of this particular day, the rain stuck around, and it really was a domino effect, and it impacted the weather for the rest of the day and the weekend. This was a lot of rain, about 2 inches of rain that we had on that particular Saturday, and this is what it looked like on top, which was nice. I like showing you this picture. This is interesting. So we had this layer of clouds, and we had this little burble, I like to call it, above that layer of clouds. These clouds were about at 5,000 feet. We're about 7 when we took that picture, so we're right on top of those. Coming back into Birmingham. What that is actually, below that cloud deck, there's actually a power plant down there. It is a steam plant, the local power company, and they have these big towers, and there's steam that comes out of those towers. Anyway, that's rising air, and it actually produced some convective currents there in the atmosphere, and you ended up with that little dome of cloud cover. And what ended up happening, we are kind of in line with this going back into the Birmingham area, and as we're descending, we encounter some of this pretty significant turbulence. I mean, it wasn't severe turbulence, but you certainly could feel it. You could feel those upward motions in the air as we were descending through this. This is actually a picture. That's what it looks like down below there on a sunny day, but that's what we ended up seeing. An interesting tidbit there that you don't typically think about. So if you're ever descending down through a layer and you see on the charts there's some kind of power plant down there, it may give you a little bit of turbulence. Some of you, I'm sure, you've flown over these facilities before, and you've actually felt that. VFR, typically we see them. We don't even head that way. So the moral of the story here is have yourself a backup plan. Don't make a run for it and hope that, oh my gosh, I've been sitting here all day and I am socked in. I can't get out. Maybe if the ceiling gets to be 1,500 feet, I'll go and take off and I'll try to maintain VFR conditions. A lot of times in the case of this weekend, you would have found that ceiling getting lower and lower and lower. So you keep getting lower and lower and lower until you can't maintain any obstacle clearance. Of course, the common name for that is called scud running, which we do not recommend. There are times if it's a short hop and you don't think the weather's going to get any worse that you can manage that. But our student, who is an instrument student, a private pilot, did the right thing, set it out, didn't make a run for it, despite the weather not cooperating, managed to get the airplane back, and all was safe, and got a couple of hours of actual instrument flight time out of this particular trip. So it all worked out. The forecast is just that. It is a prediction of what is going to happen in the future, and it is not always correct. As much as we like to make it correct and think that we are correct in the meteorology world, there are times when things don't work out. In this particular case, we had a number of forecast models that all indicated that rain was going to come through, it was going to clear out, and we would end up with a sunny day. At times, it's also gone the other way, where you think, well, the weather is going to be lousy, and then you end up seeing some significant clearing, and it works out best for you. Back when I was a VFR-only pilot, I had a couple of cases where I got stuck, one of which was a couple extra days in Savannah, Georgia, because of low clouds, and I kept thinking, if I only had my instrument rating, these clouds are maybe 1,000 feet thick, and I'll be right on top in no time. It would have been an easy feat for any instrument pilot, but not the case for me at that time, VFR only. Another time headed down to Fort Lauderdale, and it was supposed to be just a few thunderstorms, kind of scattered, big line moved through and stuck me there overnight. Both places, not the worst areas to be stuck, so to speak, if you're going anywhere. So ended up doing a little bit of extra vacationing in those locations. So always have a backup plan. What are you going to do if the weather does not work out for you? In the case of VFR pilots, it becomes a lot more limiting. In IFR conditions, many of us can manage that. Of course, what we have to stay on the ground for is convective activity. A lot of that will keep us on the ground also if we're in a situation where we have significant icing. And you can tell on the METAR map behind me on this particular recording, we have a whole bunch of marginal and IFR conditions. It is that time of the year where we start seeing a lot more of those low ceilings during the morning hours. They typically improve during the afternoon unless we have some other extenuating circumstance. One of the big questions I keep getting, and we're going to revisit this soon on an upcoming episode, is the SKU-T charts. I did a national webinar the other day, and big question, how to interpret these SKU-T charts. Where do I break out? Where are the icing levels? What are my wind speeds going to be aloft? A lot of that information you can look at, you can extrapolate from a SKU-T chart, and you get those from a variety of computer forecast models. One of my favorite sites, we talked about that, we'll bring that up on the screen, pivotalweather.com. free site, lots of information, anything from the European weather model to our high resolution rapid refresh model that gives us really a good look at simulated radar or future radar. That's a handy tool. So we're going to, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to go back into that, take a deep dive, because so many people, that's one of the most watched episodes, the skew T-chart, how to use that data, because that is something that truly does go beyond the briefing. Something else I talked about besides having that escape plan, that backup plan, also keep getting the weather information. Constantly look at that weather information when you are traveling. You almost have to be a little OCD with it. I know I am. How are the conditions improving, deteriorating? How are we getting that information in the cockpit of the aircraft? Lots to talk about. The weather's going to get a lot more active over the next several months with front after front. Of course, we've had a lot of tropical activity too that we've been dealing with. Hopefully that is going to start winding down very soon. The Atlantic hurricane season officially is going to be over on November 30th. We are really out of names now, so we'll have to come up with something else. It has been a truly very active year, and with those tropical systems, you can have severe weather. You can have some very windy conditions. A whole lot of heavy rain can be associated with that too. Thanks for checking us out in this episode of Beyond the Briefing. If you like these videos, don't forget to subscribe, share with your pilot friends, student pilots, experienced pilots, because we get on here and we discuss what's going on with the weather, how to be safer when we're flying. Use the tools that are at our fingertips. More data now than we've ever had before. It's up to us to best know how to use that data to our advantage and to stay safe and reduce the number of general aviation, especially weather-related accidents. Most all of those could be avoided. If you go back and look at those NTSB reports, you can certainly see there were a lot of clues those pilots had that would have kept them safe. You be safe. We'll talk to you next time. I'm JP Dice.